I'm Trena from John's Furniture Repair, and last week we made these two ginormous walnut leaves for this table. We're extending this table for a family that needs more room. So this week we're going to show you how to match old walnut to new walnut. Okay, so we didn't make any skirts, and I had the customer come in on Monday and just look at everything and see how he liked how it was going. And so he said, no, we don't need any skirts. It'd be just a pain in the butt for storing them, which it would be. They're big enough as it is. But when he talked to his wife, she said, why don't we just do one skirt on one leaf? So we're gonna do that. And I've chosen this one to do that with. This skirt has a little bead on the bottom, very simple, straight with a bead there. So we'll be able to make that work, not too hard. So, I mean, when it is just with one leaf, which they said they would probably keep one leaf in all of the time, they'll be able to cover up all of the skirt, all of the tracks that we put in and everything, keep it nice and uniform with the other table. So that'll look good. I agree with the choice. So let's get this set up, and I'll grab a couple tools and we'll start working on making a little skirt. Alrighty, so I found some walnut in my stash. Some pieces left over from some extras on the table. So I'm gonna need to laminate these two together to get the width. And this one is an old piece I had sitting around. And you can tell from that old walnut, it starts to get that nice tone that you're seeing on the table there. This is just, cut walnut that's been sitting around. So it does mellow out. Anyways, we're just going to join these pieces, and then we'll be able to cut them to length and width and get everything going and start with that bead profile. Okay. Alrighty, so I've got this one cut, and I left it a little bit fat just so when I get everything positioned, I have a little bit of forgiveness there if I move it over too much. So I will cut this to perfect length, which is just shallow of this, actually depending on your skirt on the table, when I got this all fastened on here. So the way that the original the original skirts were attached onto this table was with pocket screws. So that's what we're gonna do again. You can see these guys here. It's got a 1/2-inch pocket screw coming into the table. That's how it's attached, plus corner blocks. So definitely be adding those to give some more support. And the old skirts are not walnut. Not really sure what they are. Maybe a very soft walnut, but definitely a softer wood. So anyways, we're gonna mark these out. We're gonna do 3 pocket holes for these ginormous leaves. And just picking which side. I think I'm gonna put this on the inside because it's just a little bit weirder there. It'll be like that here too, but I think this has had some time to mellow out. So 2, 12, and 22. We're going to use a 1/2-inch spade bit to do this. You can use a Craig jig. I have one somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Moving is really hard, guys. Sometimes you lose all your stuff. Maybe it's in a shipping container, maybe it's in a box in the house. I don't think so, I don't know. Anyways, I've done like this for years, so no big deal. So you want to leave, like, when you're doing these holes, you want to start your point at least a 1/2 inch in, or even 5/8 to be safe. Let's go 5/8. So you're going to start your point there. And once you got that point started, you're going to start shifting because eventually you want this to angle down and come out more or less in the middle of this piece. So when you're thinking, that angle is pretty much, all the way down this way. So you're just going to start angling that in. So you want to make sure you can put that screw in too, so you have to make that angle for that reason as well. Because underneath there with the screwdriver, you're going to have a hard time. But you want to leave, a good 1/2 inch when you're done of meat on this skirt. You don't want to have this pocket going too far down, or else you got no more wood to work with. Anyways, that's good for me right there. So now I can drill the rest of the hole. And you want to keep that angled as well. So my angle is going to come out hopefully right in the middle there. That's what it looks like to me. There we go. Alrighty, so I got these all drilled, and I just wanted to show you the screw length. Really, really short screw length. We don't want a lot of the screw coming into the tabletop there, so just pick those accordingly. So now what I want to do before I actually get this in place is put this leaf back into the table and then clamp this skirt onto the leaf exactly where it goes. I do have the reference lines, so I'll start there with the clamp, and then we can adjust it perfectly to fit in the table. Alrighty, so got these guys here. So I'm going to use my lines as a reference. Of course, it's a little too long, so I'm going to have to pull this apart a bit. There we go. So I'm going to clamp it in place with my lines first. Looks like I could use a joint on the top of this. Or what we got going here. How flat is this? Huh. Okay, guys, I'm just going to run this through the jointer quick, just so I know it's good. Okay, that's why I leave things fat, so you can do those adjustments. What is better? Not perfect. I think this leaf is slightly cupped. Anyways, let's carry on. Okay, so that's actually looking really good with how fat, but these are going to shrink a bit, so I'm going to take off a little bit of the skirt length here. So I'm just going to take this line now for the bead, and I'm going to be tracing that onto this piece here. And for that, I'm going to be using a marker tool. This is Veritas marking tool from Lee Valley, and this is a nice place to use this because it can ride the bottom of this. I can set it to the height and it'll perfectly ride that area, and it just has a cutter blade here that you use. So let me set this up. Good, so that's making a nice cut point, and it's lining up with this side too, so that's good. All right, so let's take this off of here, get it on the workbench. Okay, so that's mounted. Let's check it with the table. Okay, looks pretty good. And I now know I need to put in some corner blocks just to straighten this out a little bit. For some reason, it's wanting to kind of flare out. I think it is this piece. But that's fine though. I was going to put corner blocks in anyways, so we'll just square that up. But looking good all the way across. The line is really lining up here with this. So let's put in those corner blocks. I'm trying to think, you know, how much should I take off here? Probably just a very little, like maybe like a half of a saw blade width on this side. And this side, I should probably take off a whole saw blade width. You do need to leave room for expansion and contraction here. These are gonna get smaller. So that gap's gonna widen here while this doesn't. So I need to leave room for that. So I'll take off maybe a blade width on each side, and that'll give me enough room for that. And we can always change that up later. I was trying to use this molding plane that one of my beautiful viewers sent me a long time ago when I was still in Ontario. But the one profile I thought would work was just not quite right. A lot of time these beading cutters have a square edge on the bottom. And if you look on this bead profile, it's a point. So I would be making not the right profile here with this. You can kind of make it work up to a point, but also the actual bead itself is a little different of a shape here. So unfortunately, we'll have to wait till next time. I really love this set that you sent to me. And you basically just put the blade in here. You have a lot of adjustments for different things. You can attach a shoulder jig, so you can ride the shoulder. It's a really beautiful piece of equipment, and it's got the rods here to put length in. You can see kind of a picture of it here. He sent the instructions as well, which is always super helpful. But anyways, next time. Alrighty, so I've got corner blocks installed on both sides. The skirts on the table itself are not square, so I've had to do a little bit of work shimming with some walnut shims underneath these just to tilt them in a bit. I'm not sure why that is the case, but anyways, it has to match the table. So just a little bit of a shim underneath the corner here just to pull it out a bit. So these are all installed, that's good. We're working on this profile here. That's not done yet because I want to finish it when it's in the table. And this one is just not started at all, so that's all right, we'll do that later. So let's put this back in the table and finish up the profile on that one side. Okay, so what you guys have all been waiting for here, how are we gonna match this new walnut to this old walnut, veneer versus solid? That's also a thing. And I'm gonna show you how we're gonna do that. So I've got some products. I've tried on a couple of test pieces and then did a little bit of trying here too. For the new walnut, we're gonna go in with a burnt umber dye stain. And that's kind of where we're getting there. Those tones are coming in here, but they still have those purple undertones of the new walnut. So for this stuff, we're going to come in with blue, and I didn't want to use a dye stain because I didn't want to get this too dark. So we're going to be using onyx, which is a very blue tone black. It's meant to really kill all those yellows. If you're going for a really stark black stain, this is a really nice color, Onyx by Goudy. So the only thing is the application and the way we're going to do it is important because we don't want really dark wood. I need room to tone because we're going to need to tone just to shift things slightly. I always need to leave room for that. So we're going to be using what I like to do. I like to use as a wood conditioner. We're just going to be using paint thinner. That's what I choose to use as a wood conditioner. And that's just going to allow those stains to kind of float on top instead of getting really deep into that wood. And that's really important, especially on the grain of the new wood here. We've got a lot of crazy stuff going on, and I don't want major color variation on these pieces. They're wild enough. I would like the stain work to quieten these up. So that's going to help do that as well. So let's get to it. I'm going to show you a patch right here that we're going to start with. So basically, I start with an application of the paint thinner. So I'm just going to get a rag wet and I'm going to saturate that surface. Right there. I'm just going to do this area to show you. And the edge is a whole different thing. So now let's apply the first stain, which is our onyx. And I've actually mixed this with a little bit of lacquer thinner just to dilute it. So we're going to come in with that first. I'm just going to pull this off a bit. Going to do a nice strip here to show you guys. And you're seeing some veneer sand throughs here. That was not me. Okay, so don't blame me. I'm going to get a little bit more of the stain. And another trick, if you don't want all the color that the stain has to give you, especially with these really wonderful color-rich stains is just don't mix it. Just steal a little bit off the top, and then that'll be a little bit more of a diluted solution because you're not mixing the colorant into everything. So that's also what I'm doing here. So you can see it's kind of a really dark violety blue stain. So we'll wipe that off. And I will be toning a little bit more of each of these colors. But also remember that we want to stick closer to this because this is what matches the dining room suite at home. And the chairs and all that stuff. We only did 2 chairs. So, and we matched them to the old color. So we do want to shift this, but we're shifting this slightly to this just to help us along here. But anyways, you can see how that color has kind of killed the yellow, which you can see right next to it. If you can, it's kind of hard to see color on camera. Still has that orangey underhue, which is fine. We don't want to kill that completely. So I'll just make sure that's all wiped off. Okay, so on this new walnut, we're going to use a burnt umber dye stain. And maybe I should grab my burnt umber mohawk stain. Just a second. I'm just kind of not wanting dye stain for this. Okay, while I mix this, why do I want to use a penetrating stain or a surface stain instead of a dye stain? Well, I just kind of said it. I want the color to sit on top. That's going to eschew the grain. If I put a dye stain on, and dye stains are really good at this, it's going to highlight the grain and what's going on there. So I was going to come in with my very powerful burnt umber. These are the NGR dye stains from Mohawk. They work really good if you want to shift a color. And I did this sample board here, but the difference between this sample board and our table is we've got a lot more going on there than this little patch for grain. So I'm using stains because I want to kind of, when I do the toning, I do the same thing. I kind of go over everything and kind of blur out the craziness of the grain. That birch table we did 3 projects ago, I don't remember. That was a big example of that. So it really does tone down things. If I use a dye stain, we're going to highlight everything that's going on, and I almost did that, so just dodged a bullet. Anyways, these Mohawk stains do settle out, so I've got a bit of work to do here, and then I'll show you our shift on the new walnut. Okay, I've got it mixed up here, and we're going to go in with the same area. Still has the Varsol sitting there, so I don't need to reapply that. So here's our stain, our burnt umber stain from Mohawk. Crazy red, orangey color that we're trying to shift it over to. When you're buying stain, it always depends what you're putting on. It never is what they show you on the can because we don't know what they put it on. Oak usually or something. Anyways, we're gonna wipe this off pretty heavily. Because that's not the color I want. I just want to shift the walnut to that color. That looks really good. It stained up light, which is nice. That means I can take a little bit of stain using some paint thinner off of this side and leave more room for tinting. We also have a nice white piece of grain there. So there we are, looking pretty darn good. Put them together. We've got the same tones going on. Different grain. Hard to see when it's wet here, but we are getting rid of that very neutral purple, getting rid of a little bit of orange here. That's harder to kill than the purple. But we're kind of shifting each other towards each other, and we'll get to do some more tinting and toning on these crazy leaves, which makes me happy because we can quieten this up again. So anyways, that looks good. I'm going to go through the whole table and do that, and then the other leaf. And yeah, so the other thing I wanted to talk about was edges. Edges are usually end grain, which soaks up way too much stain, in my opinion. So I like to do the same thing, and I've shown this to you before, is add a little bit of paint thinner to the end. And a lot of times, you don't even need to stain these edges. Like, the stain is still in there. But I'll give it a little bit of a tone with this raw umber, and then if it's too orange, we'll go in with the oxide. Or sorry, the onyx. But that'll get a tint as well. So really delicate color on that application, because you don't want a really light top with a super dark edge. That always looks weird. So anyways, I think we're headed in the right direction here. So let's continue on. Okay, that went well. I'm liking everything so far. The only parts I don't like are the very white parts. So I'm gonna adjust those. I'm talking about stuff like this, that, this, and same thing on down the table. Now, first thing I'm gonna do, because they are so white, is add some extra orange. And I'm just gonna dry brush that in. That's gonna bring it closer to what's around it, but gonna make it too orange. Okay, so then I'm gonna come in with the smallest amount the oxide, I keep saying oxide, onyx, and I'm gonna dry brush that in. Not trying to make the table turn into something it's not. I'm just trying to get things to quiet down a little. There's too much going on. And this is just gonna get us a little farther along the way before we do any tinting. That's just mellowing that out nicely. Especially this one here, right up against the edge of the table. Slightly offensive to me. There, it doesn't make it go away, but I think that just helps blend in the table a bit better. All that loud stuff versus all that loud stuff. It's still there, but not as stark. So I'm gonna do that around the table, and then I just have the skirt to stain up one more leaf. Okay, so it's the next day. The stain has dried, and we're gonna put a coat of lacquer on the table and the leaves. I'll be doing the undersides as well because you gotta seal both sides, especially when it's solid wood. So we'll flip those over and put a couple coats on that first. Anyways, we've got everything looking pretty good. We've got our profiles matching the table. Everything's shaved down and everything's looking pretty good. The color will need adjusting slightly, but we're definitely 80% of the way there. So let's throw a coat of lacquer on all of these pieces. Alrighty, so it's the next day. I put 2 coats on everything, including the base. Looking pretty good. Now, this is almost good enough, just with what we stained and no tinting. But if you look really closely between the 2 here, what are we missing here? You're right, yellow. So I'm gonna be taking these 2 out of the table, adding some yellow toner to these guys, just to bring them a little closer to here. That's usually what you just can't get out of new wood. It takes some time to get that yellow going in wood, so we'll add that in. And the skirt needs a bit of tinting. That's just the natural walnut color there. I didn't do any staining. I didn't want to go too dark. So we'll tint that up. A little bit of the edge needs some color. It's pretty varied, which is okay. This is a bit more of a natural finish, more natural finish than the original, which I think is a lot more beautiful, kind of showcasing the wood instead of making it all one big brown color. So yeah, looking pretty good, but we do need to cut it down and go again a few times just to kind of get that grain a little filled up, especially on this new wood. There are some areas that the new wood needs some filling, a lot of little potholes from knots and stuff that just is open in the grain with the new wood. Obviously here we have our fill. I'm gonna do some color work on that as well after we get that filled up. So yeah, so first thing I'm gonna do is give it a really heavy sand with 220, get everything flattened out again. And then I'm gonna go in, actually I'm gonna fill first and then do that. Save myself on the sanding. And then we'll go in again with a coat and some color work. So let me grab some filler. Alrighty, so we've got this thing sanded down. We've got the little fills done. We don't need to color those. They'll blend in with the finish. And I did do some color work on this dark patch that we filled there. So now we're thinking about doing some yellow because this is a whole lot less yellow than this, you can see. So we're going to be adding Mohawk's very yellow light oak toner, just a dusting over these two leaves. That's why I've got this cardboard here so we don't hit that area at all. And we'll see how that shifts. Hopefully we get a little bit closer to this, but you know, this crazy green here, we'll never get that closer. Anyways, let's give it a dusting and see how it looks. Alrighty, so you can see we've really oranged and yellowed this one up here. We may need to shift it a little, but I'm gonna put another coat of lacquer on and we'll adjust it slightly before our last coat if needed. If not, that's great. So let's throw some lacquer on here. Okay, there it is, all finished up. We did kind of a big jump from the last clip to this one. When I put the last coat on, it looked great, so I went ahead and did another final coat, and here we are all finished and looking gorgeous. Take a look at this beautiful grain right through this table. Somebody needs to come in. Okay, come on. Anyways, so you remember we did all the staining to match those two. We've got our table skirts that are looking really great, matching nicely with that profile. We also did a couple of chairs, so I thought I'd show them to you here. We did a repair and refinish on those guys. But yeah, looks really great.
a couple of you asked last week about the structure on this table. It does not, you could lean on this and because it's balanced, it's not going to tilt. I've got the biggest screws going in 5 holes along this band here. And we have some very large corner blocks that are glued to the base of each side. So it's very sturdy. And when I was talking about this base last week, that was a good choice. It's a rather large base and it's actually really proportional to the top, the base and the top. So it's a good choice for this. I always thought these bases looked a little too large for the tables and this is better. Actually, somebody said that in the comments, so I agree. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, I'm glad. And if you want to support this channel, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description below this video. And as always, thank you so much for being here and we'll see you next week. Cheers.